Hello everyone and welcome back to another Power Automate video. In this video I am going to show you how to work with attachments that have been uploaded from Microsoft Form submissions. It's not something I've really looked at before, and I was helping somebody with it the other day and it was surprisingly more complicated than I thought it should be. So I thought I would try to make it as simple as possible and explain why it can be more difficult than it would appear to be. So I have got a form here which just allows one line of text and allows you to upload some files. I'm going to set the file limit number to 3. So the number of files could be 0 because it's not required, up to 3. And this is kind of significant really. So I'm going to build a flow here. At the time of writing, or the time of recording, I could be using the new editor, but it doesn't work very well in this instance for seeing the run history. So we'll go with the old one. So up until here, completely normal form. I've forgotten what the form's called, file attachment demo. Okay, so this is what it normally looks like. So I'm just going to save this flow here so that all it does is do, when a response is submitted, get response details. So I'll do collect responses, and then upload a couple of files. So I will upload that and that. Okay, so my response is gone, and that should have triggered my flow, hopefully, and it has triggered. So let's have a look at what came through in the response details. Okay, so we have got just a few values that have come through. Let's have a look at those in a text document. So these two are come through by default, the responder and submission date and time. And then we've got these two fields. The first one is the attachments and the second one is that single line of text. So it's the attachments that's the interesting one. If we just grab that and look at it on its own, what we've got here is stringified JSON. So while this other stuff up here is just proper JSON, this value here is JSON that's been stringified so that it can fit into the string value here. So you can't work with it directly as it is. And you can see here that opening square bracket that it is an array. And we can get a better look at that by using the JSON expression, and it will unstringify it. And there we go. It will unstringify this for us and turn it back into JSON, so we'll get a better look at it. Okay, so here is my JSON result now, and we can see that our array, we don't need this anymore, contains two elements. This is our first file upload and this is our second file upload. So the second one there and the first one there. And it gives us the file ID so that we can go and grab it from OneDrive if we wanted to. So just by using that JSON expression, it's come into a format that's more usable for us. But it doesn't give us the actual file content. We need to go and get that ourselves. But before we move on to doing that, there is a problem with this, that if I come back, if I was to try and now manipulate this using apply to each loops or any other array compatible function, I could have a problem, because if there was no file attachment, it does not come through as an empty array, it comes through as nothing actually. So if we go and submit another response and put in we are just testing and submit it, That'll execute that flow again. And now if we look what we got in the response details, we got nothing. We didn't get a blank array, which is what I would have expected. We didn't get this, which is what I would have expected. We got nothing at all, which makes things a little bit tricky, because if you don't know if you're going to get a file uploaded or not, then it makes it a bit tricky. So the first thing that I'm going to do, and so, you know, in this example, we'll do things like send the attachments in an email and add them to SharePoint and things like that. We'll cover a few scenarios, but at the moment, we don't know if there's anything in there or not. So what I'm going to do is get this JSON expression, and we'll write our expressions over here so they're a bit easier to see. And I'm just going to put in empty, and then I'm going to put that inside of there. And we'll build this from the inside out. So if I put that in there, now empty is an expression that can return only two values, true or false. And it will give you true if a string or an array is empty, and it will give you false if it isn't. So we can see the output of this is true. But I want the format to be consistent all the time. I want an empty array or a populated array. So what I'm going to do is say if the thing is empty, so if there's no attachments, then I want JSON empty array. So this JSON here will produce me an empty array. Else, I want the contents of those attachments. So for my else, I'm going to do that. So it makes a slightly more sense like this. So if it's empty, give me an empty JSON array, not an empty string. And if it isn't, give me the output. So let's take a look at that now. We can run it with this one, and it should give us an empty array. And then one of the previous runs will return us the output of the attachments. And there we can see the output is the empty array. You can't see it here, but it is there. So I can use this now as the basis for an apply to each. Let's just confirm it by going back to the one from 5 minutes ago, and we'll say resubmit. And here we have all of our data. Now, if we wanted to do something like a send an email action, let's just see what that would look like first. And we can use the action to give us some clues. So I'll do send an email v2, and I'll put in my own email address. Okay, if I go into show advanced options, it offers me the ability to add attachments. Now, when we add attachments into here, they are going into an array. And if we click that button, we are allowed to supply it just the contents of an array. But I'm just going to hard code something in here. I'm going to put pool.png, and then I'll stick in just the outputs of that compose as the content. The reason I'm doing that is because I want to see the shape of the JSON that this is expecting. So if I go into peak code, here is my attachments. So we've got our opening square bracket there, so we can see it's an array, a closing square bracket down here, and inside of that, our attachments only have two properties, the name and the content bytes. So I'm just going to take that, keep a note of it, because I want to know what my output array needs to look like. So let's keep a record of that. And then for now, I will just get rid of those bits. I'm just going to add terminate in here. So we'll come back to that, send an email action. So our compose at the moment doesn't do anything apart from build us up an array, but it is the perfect input for an apply to each loop. So I'll put that expression in. I'm going to rename this apply to each form attachment. Above here, I am going to declare a variable. I'm going to initialize a variable, and I will call this attachments. I'm going to make this a type array and set no initial value. So this is just going to create us an empty JSON array, perfect for using as the input for the send an email action. So in our each form attachment, let's just see what we've got. I will just use the dynamic content from current item. And we use that with our most recently used trigger, because that was the one with the 2 attachments. Okay, so it ran twice, and this is what we get. So what I am going to do is now, I'll keep that there for a second. I'm going to do a get file content on OneDrive for Business. And for the unique identifier of the file, I will just use items each attachment. And then the property that I will use is the ID. So that will get me the file content. Now, going back to our send an email action, we know that the shape of the JSON it was looking for was like this here. So we need an object that looks like this. So I'll just grab that and use it as my starting point. And I'm going to do append to an array variable, and it's going to be the attachments variable. So I'll just paste this stuff in there. Now, name pool isn't any good, but I'll do current item again. I'm just going to grab that code. Items each form attachment, just saving myself the hassle of typing it. So we're going to go items each form attachment, and the property is name. I think it is, yeah, name. Then we also want the content bytes. Now here it's in double quotes. I'm going to take those double quotes out because we want to get the output directly from get file content. Otherwise, the output from it will get stringified because it has 2 properties in its output. So we will now just put directly here the output of get file content. So we now have 2 properties, name and content bytes. Yeah. So let's test that now. So what's important to remember is if there were no file attachments, this variable would still be an empty array, which would work well for the send an email action. So if we look at our append to array variable action, we can't see it in this view because the input is too big. But if we look at it in a browser, name attachments, how to play Tetris Bop It, and there's the content bytes. Right, so I think that's all good. So if we now edit this and get rid of this terminate step and go into the send an email step, we should just be able to supply our attachments variable to the send an email action, and it should take all of those attachments from the form submission and just send them in an email. So let's test that. Okay, so that seems to have worked. Let's go and check. Yeah, they've come through nicely. Both images have come through exactly as they were. So that looks good. So now you can use this variable containing the attachments further down in your flow, or you could do it from each form attachment loop. We use the we use another loop for now. So if I say each, apply to each, and then we'll use our attachments variable as the basis for this apply to each. So we'll say create file in SharePoint. And where am I going to put this? I think I've got this test document library. So in my name, I can use, again, the same technique I did before. Oops. I'll peek the code on there. And it's items applied to each. And it's going to be name. And the file content will be content bytes. I think that's how it looks. Capital C. Don't think it matters. So let's OK that. And so we have got over here our document library. So if I go and now test this, it will not only send an email, but it will upload the files to the document library. So we've built our array of attachments, and now we're doing things with the files in there, and there are the two files. So we could, instead of doing an apply to each on each of the files in here, we could have just done it in here. I just wanted to show you how you can reuse that variable outside of the loop. So we've done it in the send an email action and the create file action. We could, if we wanted to as well, add additional metadata. So let's add a text column, uploaded by. And then we will show or hide columns, and we will add the description column. Okay, let's delete what we've got in there. Now let's go and modify this. So I'll get rid of this apply to each loop in here. And we'll just take that. Oh, we don't need that. Let's just go to create file. So we'll get a name with the file. We can just copy that from the dynamic content. Just copy this one there. And then this one will be the output of the get file content. And then we could also do, can update the metadata, update file properties. That one. So the ID will be the item ID from the create file action. The title will leave with the description we can get from our form submission, which will be down here somewhere. What sort of stuff are you uploading? And we'll say uploaded by responder's email. And then we don't need that. So if we now save that, and test it, it should come into our document library and also get emailed. And that's kind of all you need to know, really, but it is kind of awkward because you can get a stringified JSON array or you can get nothing. And that makes it a bit tricky for a new user. But as you can see, it's actually pretty simple once you understand that concept. So I hope that is helpful to you, and I will see you in the next video. If you have any questions about what you've seen in this video, do let me know and I will try to answer them. Cheers, bye bye.